They told me to grab a coffee and wait in the break room. I was some intern who'd wandered into the wrong floor. I hadn't built the entire neural architecture that their $2 billion valuation was standing on. That was the moment I knew everything was about to change. I'm Marcus Chen, 54 years old, born in Guangzhou, raised in the back of my parents' takeout restaurant in Oakland. While other kids played Little League, I was debugging Python scripts on a cracked laptop between orders of Kung Pao chicken. My mom still has that laptop in a drawer somewhere. She calls it the machine that stole her son's childhood. She doesn't know it was also the machine that bought her house. This story starts on a Thursday morning in San Francisco, the kind where fog rolls off the bay and wraps around the Salesforce Tower like it's hiding the city's secrets. I was standing in the elevator of a glass and steel building in Soma, watching numbers climb toward the 42nd floor. My palms were sweating not from nerves, but from anger I'd been swallowing for 3 years. 3 years at Neurodyne AI. 3 years of being their invisible engine. The thing about working in artificial intelligence is everyone sees the demo. Nobody sees the architecture. Investors watch the chatbot write poetry, executives marvel at the code generation, and they all shake hands with Derek Holloway, the CEO, who wears Patagonia vests and talks about disruption every third sentence. But they never meet the guy who actually built the brain. That was me, the immigrant kid from Oakland who spent 18-hour days training models while Derek did keynote speeches at TED. I'd come to Neurodyne with a dream that felt embarrassing to say out loud. I wanted to build AI that helped people like my parents, immigrants working 16-hour days, who couldn't navigate the bureaucracy of their new country. I wanted tools that translated not just language, but context, that understood what it meant to be caught between two worlds. Instead, I got Derek. Derek Holloway was the guy who'd read one leadership book and decided he was Steve Jobs. He called all-hands meetings where he'd pace around talking about mission and vision, while engineers exchanged glances saying, "Who's going to tell him the model crashed again?" He had a corner office with a Bay Bridge view, a personal chef, and a habit of taking credit for my work in investor calls. "Our proprietary large language model," he'd say, leaning into the camera with practiced intensity, "built entirely in-house by our world-class team." He never mentioned I designed the transformer architecture at 2 a.m. in my apartment. Never mentioned I solved the latency issues making our product unusable. He just smiled and collected praise. But I told myself, it was part of the journey. The American dream isn't a straight line, right? My parents taught me to keep your head down, work harder than everyone else, and eventually notice. Eventually, you get your shot. I was wrong about that last part. The morning everything broke apart started like any other. I got to the office at 7 before free breakfast, before venture capitalists started their power walks. I liked the quiet hours, the hum of the server room, the way the city woke up while I was 3 hours into optimizing our training pipeline. At 9:15 my Slack lit up. Derek's executive assistant Brittany, who always looked at me like I was a delivery driver who'd taken a wrong turn. "Marcus, Derek needs you in the executive conference room at 10:30. Something about the Series C paperwork." I stared at the message. Derek had never invited me to an executive meeting. In 3 years, I'd been in that room twice, both times to fix the projector. But this felt significant. This was the round valuing us at $2 billion. The round that would make everyone in that room wealthy beyond their wildest dreams. I grabbed my backpack. Laptop, notebook filled with architecture diagrams, USB drive with our core model source code. Sounds paranoid, but immigrant kids learn early you keep your receipts. You document everything. Because when things go wrong, you need proof of what you built. The elevator ride to the top floor felt longer than usual. I saw my reflection in polished metal doors. Same hoodie for 3 years. Same scuffed sneakers. I looked like exactly what Derek thought I was, a code monkey grateful to work on his vision. The 42nd floor was all glass walls and abstract art costing more than my annual salary. Through the conference room windows, I saw Derek at the head of the table, surrounded by men in suits costing more than my car. I recognized faces from TechCrunch partners, from Andreessen Horowitz, a Sequoia guy who spotted unicorns. I reached for the door handle. That's when Derek saw me. Mid-sentence, gesturing at a slide about market penetration, his eyes flicked toward the glass. Confusion, recognition, annoyance. He walked over and opened the door just wide enough to stick his head out. Not wide enough to let me in. Marcus, he said, voice low and professional. The kind you use when handling a problem without important people noticing. This meeting is for senior leadership only. You know that, right? The words hit my chest like a physical blow. Senior leadership only. After 3 years building his product from scratch, after sleeping under my desk during the launch that saved the company from running out of runway, after missing my sister's graduation because Derek needed urgent optimizations before an investor demo. Legal asked me to come, I said, holding up my laptop bag. The IP documentation for the Series C. The model weights, training data provenance, all of it needs my signature. Derek glanced back at the room full of investors. I saw him calculating, weighing the embarrassment of having a hoodie-wearing engineer in his billion-dollar negotiation against the risk of not having paperwork ready. Just grab a coffee and wait in the break room, he said, already stepping back inside. Brittany will come get you if we need anything. The door clicked shut. Soft. Final. Like a period at the end of a sentence that took 3 years to write. I didn't move. I stood in that hallway with its $12,000 light fixtures in view of the city I'd fought to belong to. Through the glass, I saw Derek returning to his presentation, saw investors nodding along, saw the future being negotiated, where I'd get a retention bonus of 0.01% of what Derek made, where I'd keep building his empire while he took the credit. Then I remembered something. 6 months ago at the holiday party, Derek was drunk on Napa Cabernet, complaining about complicated immigrant visas. He'd slapped my shoulder and said, "Good thing we got you that H-1B, Marcus. Be a shame if you had to go back and—" What? Code for some factory in Shenzhen? I'd laughed it off. Immigrant reflex, smooth things over, don't make waves. But standing in that hallway, I realized Derek had been showing me exactly who he was. He didn't see me as a co-founder who'd earned equity. He saw me as a visa holder he could control. Someone too scared to speak up because I needed this job to stay in the country my parents sacrificed everything to bring me to. That's when I heard it. Derek's voice, muffled through glass but clear. Our proprietary LLM was developed entirely by our internal team, full IP ownership, clean chain of title. Something shifted in my chest. Not anger, something colder, forged in 18-hour coding sessions, and the knowledge that I was the only person in this building who understood how our model actually worked. Here's what Derek didn't know. 6 months ago, when he restructured our equity agreements and forgot to include me in the new stock pool, I'd done some restructuring of my own. Every major contribution to our core architecture was time-stamped, documented, and crucially filed under my personal copyright before transfer to the company. Standard practice from open-source communities protecting individual creators. Derek's lawyers were so focused on patent trolls, they never noticed the breadcrumbs proving I, not Neurodyne, was the original author of the code powering our entire valuation. I checked my phone. 10:47 a.m. The Series C term sheet required clear and uncontested IP ownership to close. Derek scheduled this meeting for 10:30 because the term sheet expired at noon. He'd cut it close, assuming he could steamroll through last-minute issues with his usual confidence. What he didn't know, I'd receive an email at 6 a.m. that morning. A competing offer. Not from another AI company, from a consortium of immigrant founders building something different. Something that actually helped people navigate the system instead of exploiting them. They wanted my architecture. They offered real equity. They didn't care about my visa status because they knew talent was the only currency that mattered. I had until noon to choose. Standing in that hallway, listening to Derek promise investors he owned the technology I'd built, I realized I didn't need until noon. I'd made my choice 3 years ago when I started keeping those receipts. I'd made it every time I stayed late while Derek went to his daughter's soccer games. I'd made it in the architecture itself and the resilience I'd built into the system, the same way my parents built resilience into me. I didn't knock. I opened the door and walked in. The room went silent. Derek froze mid-gesture, hand hanging in air like he'd forgotten what he was pointing at. Investors turned, expressions shifting from surprise to curiosity to recognition. The Sequoia partner actually smiled, like he'd been waiting for this plot twist. "Marcus," Derek said, voice tight, "I asked you to wait outside." "I heard," I said, walking to the table. I didn't sit. I placed my laptop down and opened it. "But I thought these gentlemen should know something before they sign." Derek's face went pale. actually pale. I saw blood drain from his cheeks as he realized I wasn't going to be the good immigrant employee who knew his place. "This isn't appropriate," he said, trying to reclaim authority. "We're in the middle of due diligence," I finished. "Right. And due diligence means knowing what you're actually buying." I turned to the investors. "Gentlemen, I'm Marcus Chen, principal architect of the large language model Derek's presenting as Neurodyne's proprietary IP. I've been sole developer of our core transformer architecture for 3 years, and I have documentation proving Neurodyne's claim to full ownership is incomplete." The Sequoia partner leaned forward. "Incomplete how?" "I filed personal copyright on all core contributions before transferring usage rights, standard practice in open source development. Derek's legal team never reviewed individual contributor agreements. They assumed corporate ownership was automatic." I pulled up documentation, dates, timestamps, Git commits with my digital signature. The paper trail Derek never bothered to look at, because he never considered I might be more than an interchangeable engineering resource. Derek tried laughing it off. "This is absurd. Marcus is a valued team member having some kind of episode. The IP is clean. Our lawyers—" "Your lawyers never assign a proper invention assignment," I said, turning to face him, "because you never thought I was important enough to worry about. You were too busy figuring out how to cut me out of equity to notice you'd also cut yourself out of the IP." Silence. The Sequoia partner typed on his laptop, probably running this past legal. "Here's what happens now," I said, addressing the room but looking at Derek. "The term sheet requires uncontested IP. I contest it. The deal doesn't close. Not today. Not until this is resolved." Derek stood up. "You're making a huge mistake. We have non-compete clauses. We have—" "You have nothing. California law makes non-competes unenforceable. And more importantly, you have a product that stops working if I stop maintaining it. I'm the only one who knows where the bodies are buried in that code base. The only one who understands the training pipeline. The only one who can keep it running." I closed my laptop. "You wanted me to wait outside while you sold the company I built. But here's the thing about immigrants, Derek. We don't wait outside. We build the house, then decide who gets invited to the party." I walked toward the door. Behind me, investors started talking. Not shouting, talking. The serious, low-voiced conversation of people realizing their billion-dollar bet had a structural flaw. Derek called after me. "Marcus, wait, let's talk." I paused at the door. "We could have talked 3 years ago, Derek. When I asked for equity. When I asked for recognition. When I asked you to see me as a partner instead of a visa holder you could exploit. But you were too busy being the visionary. So now you get to be the guy who lost a $2 billion deal because he couldn't bother learning his own engineer's name." I walked out. The hallway felt different. Same glass walls, same expensive lights, but I wasn't the guy waiting to be acknowledged anymore. I was the guy who just changed the power dynamic in a 42-floor building. My phone buzzed before I reached the elevator. Derek? Then Brittany. Then Derek again. Then an unknown number, the Sequoia partner. I let them all go to voicemail. The elevator doors opened. I stepped inside, pressed the lobby button. As doors closed, I heard raised voices from the conference room, a deal being restructured in real time. By the time I hit the street, I had 3 texts from that unknown number. The third said, "We want to talk. Not about Neurodyne, about what you're building next." I didn't answer immediately. I walked to the waterfront instead, stood looking at the Bay Bridge while fog lifted. My parents called. My mom, checking in like always. "I did something today, Ma," I said. "I stood up for myself." Pause, then. "Good. Your father and I didn't come to this country so you could bow your head. We came so you could hold it high." That night, I met the Sequoia partner. Not in Neurodyne's glass tower, but a coffee shop in the Mission where baristas knew my order. He talked about immigrant founders he'd backed who built companies that mattered. He said the best revenge wasn't destroying Derek. It was building something so much better that Derek's company became irrelevant. 6 months later, I launched my own startup. We called it BridgeEye, not after the Bay Bridge, but the idea of helping people cross from where they are to where they want to be. We built tools for immigrants navigating bureaucracy, for small business owners understanding regulations, for people caught between worlds. Derek tried suing me, claimed I stole trade secrets. His lawyer sent letters with words like egregious and malicious. My lawyers, paid by new investors, sent one letter citing California's protections for individual creators. The lawsuit died quietly. Neurodyne's Series C eventually closed, but at reduced valuation. Derek was pushed out 18 months later by investors, realizing a CEO who couldn't recognize his own principal engineer probably shouldn't lead a technology company. I heard he started a leadership podcast. I didn't listen. Bridge Eye is different from what I built at Neurodyne. Smaller, 40 employees instead of 400. But every single one has equity. Every single one gets to be in the room when decisions get made. None of them wait outside while someone else takes credit for their work. Last month we hit our first 1 million users. Most are immigrants. People like my parents. People like me. People who were told to wait outside and decided to build their own door instead. If you're watching this, and you've ever been the invisible one, the one who builds while others take credit, the one who waits while others decide, know this. Your work is your power. Your skills are your real visa to success. Nobody gets to tell you where you belong except you. Drop a comment below. Tell me about a time you had to claim your seat at the table. And if you're still waiting in the hallway, what's stopping you from walking through that door? I'm Marcus Chen. I used to build other people's dreams. Now I build my own. And you can too.